Hey there. So I wanted to actually address something, and that is kind of an elephant in the room situation, and that is the fact that I kind of quit my podcast last year. So in January of 2024, I had released my first episode. I had planned on releasing an episode every week, and I was going to do this for 2 years, and I didn't last that long, and I'll tell you why. I maybe did like 28 episodes, and I didn't release one every week. And ultimately, I was burnt out. I signed up for too much. It was doing a weekly podcast is kind of a lot, especially when you're working a day job, trying to make music, and then also trying to take care of family responsibilities. So, I've got kids and a spouse who also has a demanding job. And so we kind of take turns taxiing the kids from everywhere they need to go for their activities. So, from school, getting them to and from school, and then after activities like music classes and karate class and rock climbing practice and Girl Scouts and things like that. And so it's a lot. I found myself kind of overwhelmed with all of those things, and then also trying to do a podcast outside of those responsibilities. There's a lot that goes into making a podcast. There's a lot of prep work that happens before the podcast even gets recorded, and then there's the recording time, which and I love the conversations that I had with all of my guests, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, and then there's a lot of work after that to the editing that you have to do, and so is a lot, and I just was burnt out. Another thing that kind of added to that was that a lot of my guests are in the UK and other parts of Europe, and so I live in the US, and so I'd have to take time out of my job to I'd kind of block it off in my calendar. I do work from home, and so I was able to kind of make that happen, but I'd also have to like get out of work mode and then go back into work mode. And I didn't really feel like I was being the best employee when I was doing these interviews, and I was only doing a couple of interviews a week. So it wasn't like crazy, but it was still, more than I wanted to do during the work week and during my work day. All right. So, I mentioned that there's a lot that goes into each podcast episode, and so that was time consuming. And I found that was distracting me from making music. I mean, ultimately, I'm an artist, and I need to make music, and I want to make content too. And I am making content, and I thought that podcasting would be a really good way to make content because it would help me to build community, and I could get to know these so many wonderful, amazing people that I was interviewing. And I love those interviews. Don't get me wrong. I love those. And I really wish I could get back to doing some more of those conversations, and maybe I will in the future, but it's going to have to be on my schedule and work around my work and family schedule. Whereas with other content that I'm making right now, I can do that kind of around my schedule. I can do that after the kids go to bed or after they're home from their activities and working on homework or other things. I can work on my content and my music production, and I get to be a little bit more in control of my time with the content that I'm making now. So I do have some really cool things in store for the content that I'm making. I'm going to share a lot more about my music production process and how I made certain tracks, and some mindset content as well, and some music business as well, and then just talk about some failures that I've had, some successes that I've had, and give you a little bit more of me behind the curtains, if you will. Another reason why I stopped my podcast is that I found that I primarily listen to music business and mindset podcasts. And I felt that was a little bit out of alignment with what my podcast was. And I don't know, it just felt like I was kind of asking people to do something that I didn't necessarily do. So I love the conversations that I have. And like I mentioned, I do love those conversations. I don't necessarily listen to other podcasts where there's interviews unless it's like a guest that I really want to listen to. And so, I just want to be, when I go when I do more content in the future, and I probably will actually do some more of these interview style videos, or maybe even publish them as podcast episodes. And when I do those, I will be more intentional about the kind of questions that I ask that are specific to music business and mindset, and not necessarily just telling stories. I want to have like some intentionality about the topic that we're going to cover in the conversation. When I started my podcast, I thought that I wasn't really aware of any other podcasts that were specifically house music focused, that are that interview house music artists, etc. But since I started my podcast, I discovered that there are quite a few, and maybe I should have done a little bit more research, and maybe just it's the timing and the algorithm that served it up to me at the right time. But I do want to let you know some really cool podcasts that are out there. One is called House Culture and is based in the UK. They do some really good interviews. I encourage you to listen to it. Another podcast that you'll probably want to check out is called Elevated Frequencies. It's hosted by Olivia Mancuso from Chicago, and she talks a lot about music business and mindset, and she has on some really good guests as well. And she is very intentional about the questions that she asks and the topics that she covers. And so go check it out. I'll leave a link in the show notes or the description below. Another podcast that you'll want to check out is called Everything House Music and More, hosted by Marsh Joshua. And he's got some really good guests. And this is definitely more stories based, people telling their personal stories of house music. And the podcast features a lot of legends in the industry from Chicago. And so if you really want to get that house music history class, listen to that podcast. All right, and the last one that I'll recommend is called True House Stories by Lenny Fontana. He has a lot of really cool guests as well, who tell their stories about house music, and there's some really great interviews on that podcast. All right, so some of the key takeaways or the lessons learned from this experience is that I've had to learn this before, so it's lessons relearned. Just because you quit a specific project doesn't mean that you're quitting on your overall goals. There are lots of projects that we get involved with as artists, and that's not our entire artistry. So you're still an artist, and we can still achieve our goals without certain projects. Number two, it's really okay to reevaluate and reprioritize based on our circumstances, and we should be doing that actually more often. And then we don't necessarily need to see our failures, quote unquote, as failures. They could just be seen as lessons. So in some ways, I kind of feel like I failed at being as consistent as I wanted to be with my podcast and have it go as long as I did, but also I learned a lot. No one can ever take that away, those conversations that I've had, and I'll leave them up on my YouTube channel for you to view if you want to. And then I'll have some more conversations in the future that won't necessarily be an official podcast episode. All right. It's also super important to know your why. And it's so cliche, but it's so true as well. So when we know our purpose and we know who we are, it can help us to have a North Star when we are reevaluating and reprioritizing things in our life. So my artistry is important to me, but my family is even more important to me. And sometimes I get out of balance, and sometimes I'm putting my artistry, it seems like, before my family, but by and large, my family does come first, and that's the most important. Lastly, community is everything. So a really big thank you to all of you who are understanding of the reasons why I stopped doing my podcast, and then I appreciate you. You're awesome and amazing. Take care.